Okay, so we'll get the planning board meeting underway. In either not seeing anyone here for privilege of the floor and not seeing anybody in Zoom land for privilege of the floor. So we will move on to the minutes from the last meeting. Hope you all had a chance to look at those. Are there any objections, corrections, changes, or anything to those minutes?
No.
Okay, well, if you see them, send them my way and I'll fix any typos. Okay, so pending possible typos, they are approved. Which brings us to the town board report. So Michelle, what do you have to tell us?
I don't have a lot. I guess the last meeting, a lot of time was spent on a report by Dave Bakar on the Dryden Fiber project.
Okay.
And so that's coming along, and the first 272 houses have to be installed by the end of this year.
Okay.
In order to
Is that a grant condition?
for
or
the grants, yeah.
Okay, and does he seem to feel that's
He feels
on
like
target?
things are moving along. You've probably seen trucks around replacing poles and all that stuff, and that's all part of the project.
Okay.
And so, yeah, he's encouraging anybody that's interested to sign up and at least get on the list. It doesn't commit you to, getting it, but.
Okay.
We did talk a little bit about the possibility of renaming the planning board.
Okay.
No decisions on that, and I guess I would say if anybody has any suggestions.
Okay.
Let us know.
Oh.
And then Bill, I saw you had sent Mark a whole list of things, and I don't know if
Yes.
you heard back from him or.
We'll get, no, though I finally reached him by phone today and we walked through, but he will be talking to you guys. I think about some of the items and I'll give feedback on that.
Okay.
Near the end of the meeting.
Okay,
So, yeah.
yeah, so, other than that, so I don't have anything.
How many households was that? 272?
I think it's 272.
Has there been any looking into what other towns call their similar entity to what we are?
The board itself has not done any research on that.
Okay.
Okay. And to be honest, that's a good question, Rob. I don't know if there is something like that. We should find out. I mean, and I don't know if in most towns, the planning board, which does what our review board does both functions, perhaps. But I don't know.
Yeah,
It's a good question.
I mean, often the planning board is called the review board, and so that's why they're thinking of a different term.
Yeah.
Partly because of, references to it in the zoning law and other laws.
Yeah, it'd be like, no, it's again, I think I've said other meetings, it's always come, whenever I say I'm the planning board chair, I have to quickly let people, no, I'm not the one who reviews a project, but I'm asking these questions because we're thinking about this other,
Yeah.
future plan, so.
So,
It is definitely confusing to the community of planners, but
but I mean, the work you do is so important that I would be surprised if other communities didn't have the equivalent.
well, as always, Barb asked an excellent question, so
Yeah.
to be investigated. Okay. So, then let's move on to the heart of the meeting business. Will sent out some stuff, earlier today. I don't know if everyone has a chance to look at that, and if not, that's fine. Most of the stuff that we can just talk about in meeting, but I've sort of inserted some of that, in the middle of the list I had put out. So right now what I have is first talking about the flagging distance. Then we'll talk about vegetation maintenance and the mowing standards. Then we'll talk about qualifying agrivoltaic facilities and design guidelines for those. And then as sort of part of that or set of that, Will's flagged some things for discussion about the definitions related to farmer and qualifying ag facilities. And then there are also some questions that Will brought up, so that comes next, about what to call permittee, owner, operator in a couple spots in the law, and also making sure that whoever takes over, the successors have the same obligations. I had sent out some stuff on screening plan. We'll talk about that. And I'd also tossed something out about community benefit payment, whether we quantify that or leave it is the undefined amount that it is. And finally, I have decommissioning on the list, though I have no new information on that, but Mark has promised to think and look on that, but I'll bring that up at the end. So that's on the solar law, and then it would be discussion of the next projects. So I sort of inserted your stuff in the middle there, Will.
Sure.
As we get to it. So on flagging, this is going back to a note we have in the solar law, both for medium size and large size, that the boundaries of environmentally sensitive areas should be flagged. Guillermo had said, okay, but maybe it should be some distance from the boundary, or, you know, what should this be? I did a little poking today because I thought Adam was going to look, or did look into this, but then when he and I chatted, he said that he didn't have anything. And I think I may have just misremembered who was going to do what. So if anyone else has other thoughts, but I did find basically in the Office of Renewable Energy Siting, you know, what is codified now by the state for certain things. And really it wants the limit of disturbance flagged, and then the boundaries of any environmentally sensitive areas flagged. So they don't have an extra buffer around that, but it's supposed to be, you don't go in there, sort of thing. So it's, point one they had was, prior to construction, flag, you know, sensitive areas, boundaries with colored flagging, protected area signs, et cetera, erosion sediment control measures, things like that. But they do say, and this is something we didn't even think about, I think, or talk about in ours, that in terms of equipment storage and refueling, that has to be at least 100 feet from an environmentally sensitive area. So obviously they're looking at if the fuel gets spilled to make sure it does not impact the sensitive area. And finally, fuel storage, they state that there is no fuel or chemical storage closer than 300 feet from a wetland, water body, or stream. So that's what I found in the ORI's stuff for basically, you know, large, super large facilities. So we could say essentially the comparable if we want, or not. So I thought that out for discussion now. Do we just leave it as they flag it, or do we add some extra conditions like flag 50 feet away from an environmental sensitive area? Do we not say something about refueling and fuel storage? Any thoughts? I'm not hearing any thoughts. I have
Well,
a committee that is thoughtless.
just a kind of a question for context. So we could do different flagging distance for different size facilities. Is that right?
We could, I think. In the context of an environmentally sensitive area, I wouldn't know if that would be justified. I mean, but yes, I think one could.
The fuel storage, no closer than 300 feet.
Right.
Is that just during construction or?
This was in the construction phase. So that's probably the case. Because this was the section of regulations that had to do with construction. I didn't dig deeper.
I mean, I don't, yeah, I guess I don't see the difference for, you know, for a different size facility for environmentally sensitive areas, particularly with fuel storage, because, you know, a spill is a spill. So I'd be comfortable with mimicking that other wording that exists. I think, I mean, I don't see a reason, I'm not thinking of a reason, at least clearly now, to not mimic that wording.
Okay. Aaron, you got any thoughts?
No, not at this time. I'm reading it now.
Okay. All right. Will, what are your Any thoughts? You think should we say something about refueling and fuel storage? That's question A. And question B is, do we wanna, have a setback from a sensitive area different than, I mean, for anything, like running equipment? Or disturbing the ground?
I'm trying to picture what the difference would be in the way that the equipment would be in, the solar related equipment would be installed, and I don't think there's really any difference.
But
300 feet's a lot of feet when you're talking 2.5 acres. But,
Yeah. Well, right, which might, we could look at that, where that would preclude, I mean, again, during construction, I don't know what chemical storage takes place, but I think this is applied to wind stuff too. But I think that, my main thinking was that when they are, bringing in the thing that's gonna put the posts in for the framing, you don't want that driving into the environmentally sensitive area. So that's why there's sort of that barrier. And then you don't want fuel spilled and going in, and but you're right about if it's only a 2.5 acre site, for which is, all right, I'll do some math on the fuel storage and come back for next meeting. All right.
I think we said you could build right up to the boundaries of a property in some situations,
Right.
but you wouldn't be putting panels in to a special area, right?
Yes, I think, I mean, and that's an interesting question. I don't know if, for instance, like, say it's a weather, but DEC give a permit to put a solar thing in there, and they might,
Yeah, they might.
because their state is hot to trot on these sort of things. So I would think tell it's getting easier for certain projects to get a permit.
But for the January 2026 revisions to ORS, they gave seeker a whole lot more power, gave the DEC a whole lot more power to it for seeker than before. I don't know if you got to see
No, I
that
haven't.
version.
Okay.
Okay,
So are you saying that means that DEC is more or less likely to allow panel intrusion in a wetland?
it sounded like they have the say and the final say. That's how it read.
Okay.
But I have to admit, I didn't read the whole thing. It's pretty long.
Okay. All right, well, I will go make some specific recommendations and based on the feedback I'm hearing tonight, and we will deal with it next meeting. And I'm hoping that our next meeting is when we'll also be looking at like a marked up version of the solar law, and we'll kind of be wrapping this whole package up at that meeting. So, all right. That brings us to on my list, at least, vegetation maintenance. And with Brad not here, I'm a little leery of diving into that, but let's do some of that and see. It may be he's having an issue with his crops. I don't know. So my understanding, and Will, you were there, that at the meeting with the Ag Committee, there were some concerns about the mowing section, perhaps in part because there was some thought that if you're doing farming, that it could impact your operations. And I think we want to clarify, I think we answered that last meeting, that no, this is for only if mowing is the vegetative maintenance thing, that then we're putting restrictions on when and how and how close. And so as I proposed, one step would simply be to say that a qualifying agrivoltaic facility that this doesn't apply to. And it did look like something like that got incorporated by Brad. But he also went through and was tweaking some other wording. And so let's look at that and then see what we think. Not here to advocate for it, but first change I see now is in the design standards for vegetation management. It says currently mowing, if conducted, shall be done, and he changes shall to should, which changes a requirement to a suggestion. And we had to be done in the spring or fall, to be before or after key vegetation blooming and animal resting periods. He's proposing simply to say to be done in spring or fall to avoid disturbing. I don't know if you guys have that in front of you, but that's what I have here. So first question is shall to should. I guess I wouldn't do that because this is the design standards section that's supposed to be a shall. And so.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Yeah.
Any dissenting view?
To keep shall.
Right. I mean, other than that, otherwise, I think we should move it off of standards into a guideline. As a question, any reason to make it a guideline?
I'm in favor of keeping it as a design requirement and keeping shall.
Okay. Any other thoughts from somebody?
Was this where the concern is, well, where are you mowing? And like the discussion in the ag committee was like, well, sometimes in the spring you can't mow because you had a spring that was too wet and your equipment doesn't function in that kind of wet soil.
Right. So we had softened this a bit, all right, because originally we had like a pretty strict calendar part. I can't remember if you were at some of those meetings, but you know, I think there was some pushback indeed that, you know, the spring might be too wet to get out there. So it just says spring rather than like, you know, before April, as it used to say. Spring includes all the way up to June 5th, you know, whatever it is, 20th.
20th, yeah.
So it seems to me that somewhere by then the ground's likely to be dry.
So is it saying do it once a year or at least once a year, or is it saying specifically spring or fall?
Okay, so that so it's saying you can't do it in the middle of the period when things are blooming or nesting or whatever. If you want to do it once in the spring, or you want to do it only once in the fall, or if you want to do it once in the spring, once in the fall. I think we have language a little later on encouraging annual, even every other year mowing, but that's only an encouragement. So it could be done twice a year. I think that actually Brad is suggesting quarterly, which I think makes it difficult to meet the other requirement. So it doesn't mean, you know, it's up to the company doing the management, you know, and the owner of the PV panels, whether given their vegetation, it needs to be done twice a year, or just doing it maybe late fall is fine. It just depends what they have and how fast it grows.
So we could change that to shall be done in spring and or fall. If that helps clarify the issue.
Does that help, Will? So it makes it.
I'm not a farmer.
Yeah.
So
Well, the question is, does the language make it clear that you could do it both times?
if you say and or.
Yeah, I suppose or. Does it make any difference?
Well, if you have a crop.
But see, if you have a crop, this doesn't apply to you. This is that you're only mowing, and actually that's why there's an exception for the qualifying agrivoltaic. If you're growing a crop,
Yeah.
and I will read my stuff in a second, I guess, but it is different, right? You got to harvest the crop when it's time to harvest the crop. This doesn't apply to you. This is, there's a field
This is
where you
what-
put your stuff, and you got to keep the stuff from growing up and blocking your panels
Yeah,
and you're gonna mow.
yeah.
You're not grazing sheep, you're not growing crops. What are the restrictions on you?
Oh, so you really mean mowing that is conducted in spring or fall? Is, okay.
Yeah, the reason it's mowing if conducted is because we're holding open the fact that places might be grazed rather than mowed. So it could just say, all right, so here's my thinking. If you're grazing, what we heard from like Caleb, if you're grazing sheep or whatever, there always are some spots that you have to mow. So it can't basically eliminate all mowing. But that's the reason for the escape clause for qualifying agrivoltaic facility, that if you're grazing and you're an agrivoltaic facility, this stuff's not going to apply to you. So if you need to go out there in June and mow a little bit, or in July even, and mow right under the panels, that's fine. Because what we don't have is a large habitat that is hopefully got butterflies or birds nesting or whatever. So that's okay.
So,
Or if you're growing corn in between all the rows or hay,
good.
you can harvest that whenever.
So what you're really saying is mowing conducted in spring or fall shall be timed to avoid disturbing key vegetation blooming and animal nesting periods. That's what you're really saying, right?
Yeah, it's trying to restrict it to spring or fall, and site specifically depends on when key things are blooming or nesting, because it won't be the same for everywhere. So that's why it says time to be before or after, leaving the flexibility for them to decide, oh, this field I can do on March 28th, but this other one I can do later, that sort of thing. All right. Yeah, I don't know if the and/or helps at all, Barb. Might not, I don't know.
I mean, to me, it does, because with the shall, the shall says you do it either in spring or fall. And so I think, just to the question, are you allowed to mow twice a year, or more, as long as it's, spring and or fall? I think that, to me, that clarifies it. I think it's a good question that was asked.
Okay. Aaron, you have any thoughts on the language? Do you like-
I like and or.
Okay,
Can
that.
I just ask a question?
yes.
What if your crop is hay? Are
Right.
there restrictions on mowing for that?
So no, because at that point, if you're doing vegetation maintenance because you're growing a crop, you are, and what we hope is a qualifying agrivoltaic facility. That is, again, you can't grow 5 stalks of wheat over here in 100 acres and say, I'm an agrivoltaic facility. That's the reason why I call it qualifying. You have to have most of your stuff in crops, and then you should do it whenever is the right time to
Right.
do it for that
But
crop.
hay is considered a crop.
I think K would consider it a crop.
Yes, that's a marketable crop given how we've defined agricultural production. Yes.
So with that, you're not gonna, isn't that a real problem with growing hay, that they do mow before birds are finished nesting?
It is in many fields. Yes.
I mean, bobolinks particularly,
Yeah.
obviously, but
So this isn't gonna help that.
that's not going to help that. What it will help is, again, someone who just got a field that they're doing and they're just mowing it once, twice a year to keep it from blocking the panels, then they would have to wait till the bobolinks are done nesting.
I see.
But farmers all the time, of course, are haying when they're out there.
Yeah, and I don't think it's appropriate to put restrictions on farmers who farm agrivoltaic facilities as a qualifying agrivoltaic facility that farmers who farm any other land aren't subject to. Sure, I'd rather they don't cut hay when there's bobolinks nesting there, but that's not, not legislated against. So I don't see it appropriate to legislate against that here.
Good point.
Okay, so. All right. So we'll go with the and or. I think there's not a lot of difference in the wording of, you know, where it says to be before or to avoid disturbing. It's the same idea. I'm okay either way with that. I want to discuss some of the rest of the stuff he has proposed here, and then I am going to have to look. I want to think a bit harder about how we exempt qualifying agrivoltaic facilities. It may just be a blanket statement at the front, so we'll talk about that in a second. But it may take some fine tuning of the wording. It should be done offline. But so in then the next section of the vegetation maintenance where that he's marked up. Some of it is grammar, but our first point had been vegetation maintenance by grazing or crop production wherever possible. And I was saying that's the preferred means of vegetation maintenance. That got crossed out. I wish Brad was here to advocate and say why. Were you privy, Will, to were there comments that seem to indicate that?
No, I didn't even pick up on that.
So Bill, are you looking at II or 2, item
Yes.
1, where he crosses out vegetation maintenance by grazing or crop production wherever possible? His
Yes.
comment is that this would then become an agrivoltaic facility. And I don't think that's necessarily true, right? Because it depends on the percent of the facility that is managed by grazing or crop production, right?
Right, and thank you for pointing that out, because I had seen that and then we forgot about that. Yes. And which is why I think we need to be a little careful with how we exempt a qualifying agricultural facility, because again, these things don't apply to that, but they apply to anything else short of that. And the question is, do we expect some of that? Or the other question is, let's say you've got 100-acre or a 200-acre solar farm, and these 30 acres, you're going to grow the crop. Does that 30 acres get set aside as a qualifying agrivoltaic facility and the rest is non-agrivoltaic? Maybe that's how someone would want to do it. I assume they actually probably would. And that's actually, I think, how this one on Old 76 is being done, that part of it is that, is an agricultural facility.
Well, when we wrote this, didn't we say that if you added on like an abutting property or added on to a project, then we were looking at the total? Didn't we have something?
Yeah, I mean, I think we at one point had a threshold, right, of, and maybe it's in here, that you had to be a certain percent was in crops or something, percent utilization.
But I mean, like changing from medium to large.
Oh, yeah, that had to do, well, that's a different question, but that has to do with, right, if you get.
Right, but you don't want to apply your percentage. It's a follow-on to the comment you were making about, well, you might, yeah.
Oh, you can't, I would consider all one facility. I see what you're saying, that if you break it up into two small pieces, then they might both be medium rather than large.
Yeah, or you have,
If one's qualifying, yeah.
yeah, is it okay to have 70% of a section being agrivoltaics
Right.
and 100% of another section just solar?
So I know that we said you basically can't segment a project. That was in earlier in the law. Yeah, you could just pretend that it was three small projects abutting each other. So we did disallow that. So I think as far as the classification of size, whether it was a qualifying or not qualifying, wouldn't affect that. The size of the project determines which category you fall in. All right. I'm gonna say, let's punt on this. We really need Brad here, I think, to help advocate and explain some of the rationale for this and the changes in the design guidelines. So I'm gonna hold and contact him and see if we can make sure we get him in for the next meeting. We can still talk about some of the stuff that Will brought up. We can talk about the screening plan. And some other stuff. So let's hold on more that, we made some decisions on vegetation maintenance, but we'll get back to that. And the design guidelines for qualifying agrivoltaics will definitely come to later. So I'm gonna skip and skip. But we'll get through it next meeting, one way or the other. That's I vow. All right. So, Will, stuff you brought up. So in this, the stuff on the qualifying agrivoltaic facility, the Ag Committee firmly endorsed the idea that it should be a farmer, and the way Brad put it, meeting the New York State definition of farmer. He said, well, what the heck is that? I don't see that. And I think what he meant was, yes, someone able to qualify for an ag assessment. I think that's probably, and maybe Barb knows, or that's where the $10,000 commercial, whatever it is, threshold appears.
Sort of,
Right?
sort of, but sort of not, because, well, I guess all the other thresholds are higher, so I guess.
Yeah, and Will, just to clarify that it's not $10,000 of ag product that has to come from that solar facility land. It's just that that farmer, wherever the farmer's lands are, qualifies as a farmer because they meet that $10,000 threshold, right? So what's coming off of the solar facility could be $2, but as long as they have, $10,000 elsewhere, then they still qualify as a farmer.
Oh, I appreciate that. I didn't realize, that's how people were thinking. But if you could, not everybody who could qualify actually takes the tax exemption. That was pointed out when we were working on the farm preservation plan.
Yeah, but this doesn't say someone who's taking the ag exemption. It says they just have to prove that they, through farming activities, wherever they're farming, that they, whatever, raise $10,000 worth of stuff, product. And that qualifies them to be the person hired to, do the farming on a qualifying agrivoltaic facility. Doesn't matter that they weren't getting an ag exemption on the land, but they just to be able to prove that they're getting that amount of money.
So the parenthetical, including agrivoltaic and non-agrivoltaic farming, doesn't what, right?
Where are you looking?
The way it's in, I'm reading off of Brad's changes,
Oh, yeah, I'm,
but it was already there, right?
yeah, I'm skipping that stuff. Oh yeah, I guess he added some more stuff in here. Again, we'll talk about more next time, but
Okay, what does?
annual gross income from farming average over 3 years. Yeah. So that's exactly what we're talking about. That, however you farm, if you raise $10,000, that's good enough that you can be the person this company hires to do a agrivoltaic facility. So what he said here, I think, is what Barb just said.
Okay, so where it says including agrivoltaic and non-agrivoltaic.
Right, saying however, that means however you farm, however you raise money from farming, whether it's agrivoltaic or not agrivoltaic. That's how I read that.
Because you might have agrivoltaic someplace else?
Right, yeah.
No, that's a yes or no question.
Yes, you might.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah. Maybe you're the person who's got
okay.
4 agrivoltaic facilities in Tioga County.
Yeah.
And then there's this 20-acre one that someone wants you to hire to do here in Caroline.
Okay,
Great, you qualify. If you
okay,
raise it.
but I didn't think the ag and markets was counting agrivoltaics as part of ag income when you qualify for an assessment.
I have no idea, nor frankly do I care.
You lose your ag assessment on the property that is under agrivoltaic.
That's correct, but that's not relevant to whether we say the person who is able to do the farming on a qualifying agrivoltaic facility has to be someone who farms $10,000 worth of income. Whether you don't get an ag assessment or not
Okay,
is not relevant.
So those
Different
are
question.
two, those are two separate requirements. You have to meet the ag assessment.
No, it only says you have to average over 3 years, have at least $10,000 of farming income, of income from doing something called farming.
Well, I'm going back to the whole requirement, which says, meet the definition of a farmer, and we've just, clarified that that's not really what we're saying. What we're
Right,
saying
yeah, we can
is
take that part out.
you meet, it's, so
Yeah.
you've got two.
Right, I think I would cut that, I agree, I think meeting the New York State Definition of Farmer was sort of Brad's shorthand before. And I think that he wants to say it, that it's simply total annual gross income average over 3 years of at least $10,000 from all sources. I'm fine with that. I agree with the meeting New York State Definition of Farmer is confusing,
Yeah, because there is no definition.
right? So that's fine, I think we take that out.
Oh, okay. Sorry, it's.
Well, no, you're not. I think that was a good catch. I had forgotten that was still in there. Okay, but again, we'll talk more about this.
Okay,
So, okay, so in general, the way the law was structured, and I can't remember all the parts, of course, if you're, the reason we have a qualifying agrivoltaic facility is that we're gonna give you a benefit. We're gonna give you a break on the community benefit payment if you're qualifying. But that allows us to place some restrictions on you, like the farmer thing and like the, a bunch of area and all that kind of stuff. Doesn't mean you couldn't do agrivoltaics, you just won't get any benefit from the town, and if you're not, then you're not regulated by these things. So, in the definition of agriculture, that leads us to the definition of agricultural production. Because we just said, that they're making marketable products, that's fine. And you were questioning, Will, I think, maybe we just handled that with your first part there.
it sort of boils down to, do you want a farm plan from for all agrivoltaic facilities, and not just from those that it would be big enough to be a qualifying agrivoltaic facility?
And big enough is not necessarily the threshold for qualifying. Yeah.
But you have to be large.
No, well, you could be the medium size and be, you can,
Oh.
there's no, somewhere it did say large, and that was a mistake, I think. So I think you can be any size. And so I would keep the word qualifying in the definition for farm plan. I don't think we need to require a farm plan, but we could from anyone doing agrivoltaics. But again, the town doesn't have a whole lot of leverage or reason if someone just wants to do it there that way. So I don't know, what do people think? So right now, it says that the farm plan is for a qualifying agrivoltaic facility, basically.
Yeah, I think the farm plan should be required only for the qualifying agrivoltaic facility. There is a vegetation management plan that's required for all facilities. And so, the only thing that would be missing there is, a vegetation management plan would include the plant, the plant crops that somebody wanted to do if it was a farm, but not a qualifying agrivoltaic facility. The vegetation management plan obviously doesn't include animal management, but I don't see the need to ask for that if they're not seeking to be a qualifying agrivoltaic facility.
Okay, looks like Erin is nodding her head.
I agree with Barb.
So the earlier remarks about if someone's just doing sustenance.
Right, I was looking for that. I don't know if we had not hit it yet.
Was in.
Oh, I see, right.
September, some earlier minutes.
Right, So, right, and so in the end, I think this, again, we were thinking a bit differently at the time, we've come further, so. So what Will's referring to is in the minutes from a past meeting, we had talked about the fact that we were talking about marketable products being the qualifying for alcohol production, didn't mean they actually were sold. They just had to be of the sufficient quality quantity that could be sold. And we had the comment that this avoids any unintended restriction that would prevent a subsistence farmer, say, from being the one doing the farming at an agrivoltaic facility. Again, that in some sense is now, not so much thinking that we only care if you're a qualifying agrivoltaic facility, whether you're a subsistence farmer or not, because we're making you now earn $10,000. So that was just an old part of minutes, I think.
Oh, okay, then, yeah, it's not relevant anymore then.
All right.
Okay,
And you asked why there are both a definition for agrivoltaic facility, qualifying, and for qualifying. It's just so that people can find it quickly if they hit these words. So there's a definition, I think, for agrivoltaic facility.
Yes.
And so right below it then, alphabetized would be agrivoltaic facility qualifying, and it would probably say C qualifying agrivoltaic facility or something. And then you type the definition of the other one. So only one has the words, the other one says see the other one.
okay,
And it's just so that it falls nicely alphabetized. If you're looking up the phrase from, you read it, you find the definitions, or if you're reading about agrivoltaic facilities, you see there's two kinds for Caroline. That's the reason. Okay, and then you said, and maybe we handled that, you said that you would clarify that only ag facilities are part of large facilities can be considered qualifying agricultural facilities. I think that's not true. Again, if you, again, maybe you've got a bunch of other farm income or a bunch of other things and you want to manage this 1.5 acre thing, that's fine. That's where you, so I think it's not an issue. Anybody else?
Agreed.
so it qualifying agrivoltaic facilities might be a medium,
Yeah, it could be, yeah.
but it's under the large.
So the requirements, that's true.
I think that's where I.
Okay, I understand that. I think that, and I think we can clarify that. I will look at that. I mean, because again, there's essentially for medium ones, there's no restrictions to lift, I think, but I will take a look through that section. Because what we were doing is trying to lift some of the restrictions and place the requirements on it. So yes, we shall have to make sure we place the requirements in the medium section too. That is a catch. Okay, good point. Okay, so then, let's see, I think we had a couple other things related.
Yeah, they're tricky. It's about the permittee
Yeah.
language. If you put it in the definition, it's easier. Permittee and successors.
So I don't know if you guys are in tune with what Will's talking about. Is in her note to, earlier, under host community agreement, it's defined as a legally binding contract between the applicant and or operator, and their successors. And then under permittee, that's defined as an applicant who's been granted a permit or a site planning approval. And so Will is suggesting certainly that the permittee definition should also have and their successors in it, because if you sell your thing to somebody else, you're not going to own the permit. But are you saying we need to do anything different under host community agreement or not? Do we need to add permittee as well as applicant and or operator?
Well, I think that isn't that what you were where you were adding in permittee?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. I think we probably should, and maybe we get rid of the word applicant.
Yes.
So then the host community would be a legally binding contract between the permittee.
Yep.
But I think we probably still want and or operator.
I think you do. but I feel like I'm out of my element there.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's fine. And that was for that. Okay, so yeah, I think it will say permittee. Permittee will be defined as an applicant who's been granted the permit and their successors. So that covers the successor part. So the successor part can go away from here. And I will think about operator, because I don't know, I think operator is probably not defined. And as long as we define operator as the one who's running it and or there's, you know, the one who's running it, probably good enough. Because you wouldn't have successor operator, I mean, because they're the operator, no.
Yeah.
I think we just use the word operator, it's fine.
Yeah.
So I think permittee, operator, that's fine, that, and we add successors to definition. You guys all follow that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good, because I couldn't and I was reading it.
Oh, sorry, I don't like to get too picky on wordsmithing at this point, but
Yeah, no, that's fine,
I think they were clarified.
all right. Okay, so indeed, your point, rather, the next thing you flag has to do with qualifying agrivoltaic facilities. It's in the large solar facility section, so it refers to large. So I want to talk about benefits now anyway. So we'll just talk about that. So the law calls for a host community agreement to be reached that provides a community benefit, basically a national payment to the town. Though in sometimes it's like you build a playground or, you know, whatever. So the two questions, one, or well, at least one question. We currently don't specify anything about how big that is. We left it to be a negotiated amount. And my discomfort with that is that if we're then saying, but if you do a qualifying agrivoltaic facility, you'll get a reduced amount. Since the original amount was undetermined, it becomes a little fuzzy how much, you know, did I really get a reduced amount, or are they going to give me that all along and they just said they gave me a reduced amount? So I legally don't know how well it would fly not to have some quantified number in there. I don't know the answer. Anyone have any thoughts? If we had to quantify it, my thought would be to and sometimes tie it to the amount that the county has worked out for the pilot agreement. And I'm still trying to get a fraction of that payment we get, but I think it's going to be like 20 or 30%. So if we even said that 10% of the pilot amount was the community benefit payment, that would like bring us up from 25%, 35%. You know, it'd be a substantial amount of money. So it doesn't have to be a big fraction of that to actually be a pretty significant fraction for Caroline. So I don't know if that made sense or not, but I don't know what to do. Do we just leave it the way we have it with an unspecified amount? And if so, is it still okay to say to people, yeah, we'll give you a break if you do this?
Okay, can you read the wording again, just where it says that, where you referring to the unspecified amount? Just read what it says.
I will have to pull the law up because I was just shooting from memory. I do have it here.
And do we have control over that?
Well, okay, so right now, okay, so we do have control over a payment that I am asking so there's a requirement now that the developer negotiate an agreement with the town for a benefit payment. Okay. What we don't have control over is what the local industrial development agency does and negotiates. All I'm saying is that we use them as a yardstick.
Okay.
Because frankly, I have no idea what a reasonable amount of money to ask from a developer is. At
Right.
what point do we nix the deal? So
And I-
they
yeah.
are the experts who theoretically know what they can get away with because they've negotiated other ones of these.
Yeah,
So if they think they could charge, as an example, $400 per megawatt,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the number they do. And I know that Caroline's gonna get $150 of that. That for us to say, okay, well, we want to negotiate an agreement in which you're paying $50 per megawatt to Caroline in addition to that. So their payment is not 400, but 450.
Yeah.
So it's not a huge increment for them. But, you know, for Caroline, it was getting 150, is now getting 200, it's a
Yeah.
substantial bump. So that's the sort of thing I was talking about.
yeah, I guess it's just with recent things with the pilot agreement, I just got the impression that we didn't have any control over it.
We don't. We have no control over the pilot, the fraction we get from the pilot, the
Okay.
amount of the pilot.
Okay,
As I was using it as a measuring stick.
oh, I see, okay,
That if that's what they're negotiating, we'll negotiate for 25% of that or something like that.
okay.
Because I
So the
don't,
community payment is separate from the pilot,
it is separate from the
okay,
pilot.
and we can do that, we can add it,
Guy says we can do that.
okay.
So. All right, so solar law. Give me a sec while it pops up.
And if you tie it to the pilot is calculated per megawatt of
Right.
capacity of the installation. So we wouldn't have to do that part of it. It's already.
Well, right.
It's already done it.
Or I would just say, let's say if they're doing 400, let's do 100. I wouldn't say X
Right.
fraction. The reason I wouldn't say X fraction, the pilot, just say whatever, because from what I'm hearing from the assessment office is that with upcoming revisions, et cetera, they expect fewer and fewer pilots to be negotiated, that the breaks the DC and ORIs are going to give to developers is such that they're going to start going with property tax assessment. Once they fix their formula that got thrown out by the court as being unconstitutional. And Barb, I'm sorry, I have the original solar law here, and so it won't have, we came up with some wording for that benefit payment section, and I don't know if I have it.
Would it be in the minutes?
It would be in some minutes, but I don't know what minutes, so let me just take a look. Quickly,
I
in
have
the meeting. there's-
August.
So it's not there. Okay, so no, I can't give you the exact wording. I think it says, and Brad had something, but I don't think his was right. Let me just look at this one thing.
We talked about it
So Brad had something. I don't have it original. Okay, yeah, it just says that, again, it'll be in somewhere, that, the town, again, probably the permittee shall negotiate a host benefit agreement with the town. I think that's what it says.
So, yeah, so I guess I'm not feeling strongly at this point that we need to put a limit on that. I mean, if there's not a limit, that gives more flexibility to the town to negotiate what the town is seeking or thinks it can get or not get.
But which is why I think I proposed it that way originally. I'm just asking now, is it fair to ask someone coming in wanting to be a qualifying agrivoltaic facility to enter into negotiations where all the terms are all the amounts are undetermined? Maybe they can assume that the review board is negotiating in good faith.
Well, the classic book on negotiation, Getting to Yes, would argue that it's dangerous to begin, from a set position. And so there's more benefit to all parties by having openness to all ideas.
All right, well, that's okay by me. Again, it may be flagged down the line by the town board or by Guy, I don't know, so I'm okay. So if we do that, then under one of the benefits of being a qualifying agrivoltaic facility, currently it says a qualifying agrivoltaic facility is eligible for a reduced or eliminated host community agreement payment, and is exempt, as noted in the sections, from certain design requirements. I would personally say I'd get rid of the word eliminated. I mean, reduced can include eliminated, and so I don't want to hold that thing, so I would probably get rid of that. And it does currently say we're part of large solar facilities, because that's the section this all falls in, as Will flagged. So we either have to move it into its own section that's not part of either medium or large, so it applies to both, or duplicate the language in medium. And let me take a look at the structure of the law and come back on that one. You got to understand the dilemma. If it's all in the large one, then it can't apply to medium and,
Right.
okay. Okay. All right. That mostly handles what you sent out, Will, I think.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay, which brings us to screening plan. And we actually already dealt with community benefit payment, which is later in the agenda, but we just did it, so that's great. Don't specify. Okay, so I put out a bunch of suggestions for the screening plan a week or two ago. I hope you guys had a chance to look at that. So I'm hoping we can just step through and either approve or make changes. First one is, I think, straightforward and trivial. We agreed that it wouldn't be a screen planting plan since things that weren't plants might be used, so it should be called a screening plan. And so what I did do is make that change and also specifically use the words safety and aesthetic concerns as being the reason for having a screening plan. So the current definition I'm proposing is a written plan describing and illustrating how visual, safety, and aesthetic concerns related to a facility will be mitigated through the use of berms, fencing, vegetation, or other means. So I tried to include all, you know, the smorgasbord. Okay as is, changes?
I like it. I like adding specifically the notion of safety because the existing one says visual appearance. So yes, I think the revised version is good.
Okay, and I seem to have lost Erin.
Oh,
Erin, are you
well,
there?
no, she's there. She just turned off her camera.
Okay, that's what it just appeared on this one view. Okay, that's great. All right, good. You worried me there. All right. Will, you okay with that? And Erin, I'll assume you'll.
Yeah.
Okay, and then straightforwardly, wherever it refers to screen planting plan, now it'll say screening plan. But then somewhat more involved has to do with the design requirements. So, again, do folks have that pulled up? They need to read what I had written.
I have it pulled up.
Erin, do you have a view of it? She stepped away for a minute. Okay. And I can actually put it, I have it written out here. I can pull it up on my computer. If you want to look at my piece of paper, Will, unless you have it there.
Well, I have the version that
I emailed.
Fred,
No, this is a screening plan, so it's different. This is not anything Brad looked at.
it wasn't added into it.
No.
I was having trouble like finding
Yeah.
what was it after all.
So it's the bottom part of
there
the
we
L,
go.
the screening plan, L.
Thank
All
you.
right. So, you know, again, we were very brief in the original law, just saying it's, you know, because it's all plantings, native preferred, mixed deciduous. So trying to incorporate what we discussed at the last meeting, I threw in, you know, that basically they should evaluate potential for glare and safety issues. And that they're supposed to consult, they're supposed to consult the adjacent, abutting, and adjoining property owners. And it just says to be taken into consideration because we agreed that it might be hard to absolutely satisfy everyone. I have one, and just to make them work at it a bit, I did say that the plan should sort of, you know, say, what did you hear from the neighbors and what are you doing about I am wondering, what about the person that lives a couple houses down? They're not adjoining adjacent to abutting, but the thing's right in their view of the front yard. And the same thing occurs with from public use areas. On the other hand, if you're 3 miles away, but you can see it on the horizon, so I didn't know what to do about that. So the question is, do we also have something in here that says if you're somehow close enough and can see it, that they should talk to you? That's a question.
I'm not comfortable with the if you can see it, because again, that could be if you can see it from, from a vista on top of a mountain 10 miles away. I mean, I don't like that language. I mean, we could say adjacent, abutting, and adjoining property owners and other owners within X, X feet or yards of the facility. I'm not.
Because, but what would those feet, how many feet would that be?
Yeah, I'm not, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what to specify with that. And, then you run into, okay, so what if the property line is, here, but the residence isn't, for, many acres beyond that. Yeah. I mean, I'm comfortable with leaving it as adjacent, abutting, and adjoining. I think by doing that, you're likely to hear the variety of opinions that probably exist.
There's nothing to prevent other people from voicing their opinion, right?
Right. This is.
Right, and there's a community meeting that that is required, and then there's also the public hearing, right, that would be required.
And indeed, folks could voice their opinion at any time to the review board as well. So, okay, so yeah, that was kind of where I was coming down, but I couldn't see how to draw the line, because I'm sure it depends a lot on the specifics of the situation. So.
Well, so let me ask this. So when would the screening plan be written and and presented? And why I'm asking that is, we say now in this language that the consultations with adjacent, adjoining, abutting property owners shall be summarized in the screening plan. We could also say that concerns voiced at the community meeting could be summarized in the screening plan as well. I don't think we can say public hearing, because the public hearing occurs after this is submitted, right?
Correct. I can go either way. I mean, we could add that in. Thoughts, Will, whether, again, so what there is after, the draft, they come to the review board and say, hey, we're gonna, be doing this. And then the clock starts ticking on, and then having to have a community meeting within, I think we said a couple months or something.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, just in the spirit of making them think and showing that they have actually taken seriously comments that they hear from the community, I would suggest that we have them summarize their what they learned in the community meeting as well.
okay, I'm putting a note in my file. I'm good with that. Any objection, Will? It'll be basically, summarize.
Say the timing, because they present the screening plan.
So they will present it to the review board at some point in the review board's process, which is a timetable that we don't know. But for sure, the entire package goes through a public hearing. But earlier in the process is hey, community, this is something that, this company is thinking of doing. The company is supposed to have a community meeting to inform the community about what's up and gather some feedback.
So there's the sketch plan. The sketch plan conference is before they present a screening plan. They present screening plans part of the site plan review.
It's part of the site plan review. So again, that's up to the, yeah, so there's a sketch plan conference where they come in for initial consult with the review board. And the review board, they probably tell them roughly the parameters. And the review board tells them, make sure they are apprised of the law and everything. Okay, but I'm expecting to have a screening plan at that point. And then the company goes away and starts developing their
Yeah,
stuff.
and they have
basically.
to have a complete application, right?
Before they have,
The community.
no, the community meeting, before, the community meeting is timed to after the sketch plan, I believe.
Yes,
I mean, right, so they have to have that within a couple months of the sketch plan conference.
yes, but
I think the review board, the clock doesn't start ticking, the review board to be done reviewing until they have a complete application.
right, and
Which could
that's
be,
my,
it could be anywhere from 2 months to 6 months to 2 years after, I think, the sketch plan.
what is the complete application before or after the community meeting? I
I
thought
think
it was before.
I don't think so,
Oh,
because I don't think they have to have a complete application, that the clock for the community meeting is dictated by the sketch plan. Like when they first come to approach the review board and say, here's the rough idea, rough outline. So we should look at that, maybe I'm misremembering. But
I have
the
no
review board does not formally in detail review the whole proposal until it's complete. But I don't know, but I think that right, correct, am I right about that? Anyone? Right.
It's I looked at the language and I wanted to ask you guys, how do you figure out where, like, what the relative timeframes are? Because I was going back and forth between the zoning law and what we were looking at.
Yeah,
And
I think there's no.
I just couldn't,
Right, the process
clear.
for reviewing the complete, so I think the review board doesn't sort of like move forward until they have a complete application, but that doesn't mean that's the first meeting, and I think they had a sketch plan before that. But how long it takes to go from sketch plan to complete application, I think is an unspecified amount of time, I believe. There's no clock there that forces. And I don't think there's any clock that forces quick action. I can't remember if there's even any clock on the review boards and how fast they get through.
here it is, the public hearing shall be held within 62 days of the review board's acceptance of the site plan application as complete for
Okay,
review.
so the only clock is that the review board has to finish in 2 months, basically,
Of,
getting a complete application. But the amount of time it takes for them to get a complete application, I believe, is unspecified.
and the community meeting is a certain amount of time before,
It's time after the sketch plan.
but before the public,
Yes, it also says it has to be before the public hearing. We can't,
Right.
they have one after.
by 90 days or something.
Yeah, it was pretty vague, but it just said you can be up to 60, 90 days after your sketch plan conference, but damn it, make it before the public hearing. It's, something like that.
Okay, so,
Because I didn't want them to think they could hold, so let's say they're gonna be really quick, they have to have the community meeting earlier. If they're gonna be really quick in their, getting to a public hearing, well, they better have that community meeting early.
so,
But I'm expecting it to take months.
okay, and when you have the community meeting, you may or may not have a screening plan.
Again, we're assuming they have some notion, but they don't have to have one for the community meeting. Community meeting is the developer talking to the public about the project.
Okay,
Wherever they're at that point is up to them.
okay,
And the public can say, hey, I've got this gorgeous view right where you plan to put this stuff, and they don't have to see a screening plan to say, I want something here, or I don't care what you do. They can give that feedback without seeing, at that point, it seems to be a screening plan. They can let their desires be known, and then based on that, as Barb was saying, they can develop a screening plan. So it's reasonable to ask them to summarize comments at the community meeting, if there are any, about screening in the screening plan.
okay. So as far as So at what point do you want them to show that they acknowledge what they heard as a community?
That's when they present the screening plan to the review board, which has to happen before the public hearing. That's part of the complete application. So when they submit a complete application, it'll have a screening plan in it, and at that point, they will have all that. That's how I see it.
Thank you. I really tried to get it in my head, reading through all those parameters.
Okay, so I'm adding just a quick note to add something saying that you have to summarize the feedback from the meeting, if any. I will highlight that in my notes here. So that will get added. And then my third point had to do with, okay, so yeah, but who gets to advocate for the fact that there's a park there or a trail there? And so I'm giving that to the review board, and there again, I thought it could, I had sort of said within X feet, but maybe we don't need to say that. The question is, how do we just say near the facility? It's up to the review board. So the question is, if there are public use areas, parks, trails, and the like, something, the facility, the review board shall take on the role, of an adjacent abutting or joining property owner. That's pretty funky wording, I know, but.
We could just say, if there are public use areas in proximity of the proposed facility.
Like that.
Is the concern visual?
Yeah, well, it could be visual or safety. Let's say you're riding a bike and there's a lot of glare in your face and you hit the guy coming at, right? So yeah, that's why it's both. Aesthetic and safety. So in proximity to, is that what you said?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Go with that. Quick editing here, and I will strike. Okay. And then I do throw point 4 was, yes, the native species are preferred, if you're growing stuff. And then the escape clause, if it's a qualifying agrivoltaic facility, and then it's okay to use non-native species or cultivars as part of the screening plan. And if screening is being done by apple trees, or plum trees or Asian pears, that's okay.
Sounds
Any
good.
What's your thoughts? All right. Then the last part, I think. Here, we got the other side of you. Okay, so this is the question. This is now the operation requirements. This is the timing. So originally, and this is still the language I taught today in the ORI's thing, that basically a qualified arborist for 2 years is all that's required. We again, probably a bit by Guillermo, we're thinking of something different. We did say rather than arborist, I'd use the words qualified vegetation specialist. So whatever that means, but that was, I think, Brad's preference to a landscape architect. And that they have to do it each of the first 2 years, I said, and then like every several years until decommissioning. And then an escape clause for the developer that if the screening is being done by crops, the owner operator isn't responsible, it's the farmer. So if there's a part of the screening plan was a row of fruit trees and one of them dies, it's not up to the owner of the PV panels to replace that. It really should be on the farmer. So. Any thoughts on that?
I don't know. Is that putting it? I like the language as a whole. I'm just trying to reason through why it would be the farmer's responsibility to replace something that's gone bad for, that's screening purposes, when if it wasn't a farming facility, it would fall to the operator, that cost would. And so yeah, I guess I'm just wondering why the operator wouldn't bear that cost.
But it's a good question. And as I was reading out loud, I was starting to wonder myself, second guess my own thinking. I guess it was in my head, and maybe I'm wrong, that in essence, the farmer owns the trees, and maybe I'm wrong, because of course they could, but I don't know how this works in practice, but that the operator may contract with the farmer to do the stuff, some of which is screen planting. The farmer goes out and buys these trees, puts them in, and theoretically manages them. So I saw the ownership and management of them being done by the farmer, and that's why.
But let me just take that thought a little bit further then. So it's the operator's responsibility to make, or the permittee, it's the permittee's responsibility, I think, to ensure that a facility that's a designated qualifying agrivoltaic facility remains qualifying, right? It's not the farmer's responsibility because they're not operating the facility. It's the permittee that is operating the facility. So in relationship to the screening responsibility, that seems to me like that financially at least ought to be the responsibility of the permittee or the operator, whatever language we're using.
I'm covered. I'm fine. I think we can leave it to the farmer and permittee to negotiate a contract when they install that as to who needs to replace it if it dies. We put the requirement that the permittee has to, and if they want to essentially say to the farmer, hey, I'm not gonna be on the hook if the fruit tree dies, we can leave that. So let's delete that last part. I'm good with that.
Might be information in this.
Yeah, all we're gonna do is require that the screening plan has to work. That includes replacing things that were supposed to be part of it that are dead. And how that gets done will lead to the committee to work out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. So, all right, so that's that. We had two questions on decommissioning that we still have questions on. Mark and I talked about it briefly today. He's going to think about it a bit. I don't know if he's going to pass it on to Guy or not. We'll see next meeting. We'll have information, but it had to do with whether a lien is being put on the property. If decommissioning wasn't done appropriately, the town has to take over, and the escrow funds would have not been quite enough. They put a lien on the property, but at that point, that is the landowner, not the operator. So that's a potential issue. So I think Mark would probably ask, we may get rid of that part. And the town basically, the other had to do with who holds the escrow funds. I think the town does not have a whole lot of experience with that one way or the other. So Mark will probably talk to you guys about it maybe, but it just hasn't happened. So there's not like an established policy, about anything. So anyway, more to be learned there. All right. Okay, so we got more work to do there, and I'll get in touch with Brad and see what's going on there. But hopefully the next meeting we'll be finishing up and dotting some I's, crossing some T's and all that stuff on the solar law. So then it's time to move on to some new things. So we'll spend maybe 10 minutes going through the list, and then that'll be our meeting tonight. So what I'm going to do here is just give you the feedback I sort of initially got from Mark. And then I also want to hear any ideas you have and your thoughts on the things that I threw out. And in terms of data centers, Mark will talk to the rest of the town board about this, but he's, I think, leaning towards the fact that they will not necessarily need an opinion from the planning board on that issue, that they're already down the path. He also thinks that TCOG, which is a joint meeting of the Tompkins County Council of Governments, may be addressing the issue. And so, you know, there may be a higher level going on, so we may likely not need to do anything on data centers.
People say data centers, they mean large data centers,
I-
not all
I-
data centers,
I,
right?
Are there small data centers?
All sizes.
I mean, I think one could think of setting a threshold by,
Yeah.
not
You
50 cents.
want me to send you something about that?
Sorry?
Do you
I
wanna-
can send you like a good summary about that.
Sure.
Right. Perennial areas, the idea of critical environmental areas, which are basically designating an area as, you know, needing careful attention during the seeker process. That there is one in Tompkins County, which is, in the name of the Glen over in, I don't know, it's Newfield or Enfield, maybe Enfield, I don't know. But I think in like Cortland, for example, they have a sole source aquifer and they define that whole aquifer as a critical environmental area. And what that means is just extra careful review, in seeker and that sort of stuff. I don't know if there's sites in the town that are either environmentally sensitive enough in terms of, you know, or important enough to warrant that. That would be what we would look into. I had mentioned, because, you know, I just know a lot of people get water out of this thing right here that flows out by the town hall, which I called a spring. And Mark corrected me, it's not actually a spring, it's the overflow from the well. So the difference, it seems to me, is obviously there's positive pressure, so it could be an artesian well were it to come to the surface, but it does probably mean that wherever this pipe is coming from is at least somewhere underground and therefore maybe less vulnerable to pollution. But I know that in the past, people complained that one time road work was being done and somehow that punctured the lining or whatever that is, aquifer, gravel embedded, whatever, and then they lost a lot of pressure and that water stopped flowing, so they repaired it. So I still think it's possible that that would be something to put down. He was kind of not so hot on that, but we'll see. Anyway, so but in general, the question would be looking at whether there were areas to designate in the town or not.
You know, wasn't there just an article about critical environmental areas? And
I do not know. Was there?
I thought it might have even been in the Cornell Chronicle, unless I'm thinking something different. And they were determined by some grad student in the 90s.
That might be. So there are things called unique natural areas
That must be what I'm thinking of.
in Tompkins County, and they did a bunch of work. Probably some grad student in planning helped with that, but that
Okay.
90s sounds right for the timing of that.
Okay, so this is different.
And indeed, we would start with, there are a dozen, 19 UNAs in Caroline,
Okay,
and that would be the place to start. We could look at those, for example.
okay, so that's different from a,
Yes, a critical environmental area is a state designation,
okay,
and the UNA, the unique natural area, is a county designation. The UNA designation carries no regulatory import.
okay,
It was to identify to towns possible areas where they might want to enact regulations. But
okay.
the designation itself
Wait,
carries
critical
no
environmental
import.
areas are county or state?
With the
State.
critical environmental areas are state,
Okay,
the unique natural areas are county.
all right.
In terms of water quality, you guys were hearing for a couple of years, I kept saying, oh my God, this flood prevention law doesn't really help if there's a flood. It doesn't do anything to prevent pollutants from going into the stream or causing water quality issues. What it does is protect the buildings from damage, et cetera. That's not quite true, because when I really went into it last year when we did this, the DEC does have some prohibitions on like fuel storage and other things in like the flood areas. So I'm less concerned about that. But we could look at, nevertheless, still looking at that law or adding a companion law that would add a layer of protection, if we thought it needed it on top of what was in the flood prevention law, to protect the water quality in the event there is a major flood. So that would be, again, a research question looking into, you know, is there a need? And if the need is, well, what would we do? I also threw down town road classification and standards. Because when the zoning commission worked, that was an old law, and we thought, this probably needs to be updated. And I brought that up to Mark, he said, not necessarily that, but the highway department has been talking about wanting a road use law to protect the roads from heavy use, particularly by logging trucks. And I do that. And so we'll talk about more of that in a minute. So that's a possibility. Whether we do the road classifications and standards or not, we might look potentially at a road use law. And that sounds like, from our perspective, that would treat a need the town has, some of the town has wanted to do. In terms of the road classifications and standards, my suggestion, as I wrote in the notes you guys, would be to have the Cornell Local Roads Program look at what we've got in the books and give us some suggestions. That's their expertise, and so.
And it does still exist, Bill.
Yes, I even looked it up today, so thank you for checking me on that. Yes, I couldn't remember if they've been one of the things that got axed along the way in all the budget cuts. Wireless communications, I don't know what you guys are hearing. At one time, it was a big concern by first responders that they didn't have adequate communication in town. And obviously residents were often also upset not having cell phone coverage. With the new tower on Bald Hill, I know I'm better than I was, it's still not great. But does anybody know if lack of communication wirelessly is still a significant concern in certain parts of the town?
There's still areas where reception cuts out.
Okay.
And I know our reception off of Bald Hill is really good. But it goes every once in a while, because it's the only tower. We're not covered by two towers.
Aaron, where do you live? Are you in Brookendale or?
I'm in Sladeville Springs.
Great, okay, so is it, communication's good there? You got a good decent cell signal?
No, I only have 2 bars most of the time.
Okay, and can you get data?
But that's, yeah.
Okay.
Nothing's changed for me.
At any rate, there's limited local role in this. There's a lot of federal and state preemption, though Will looked into it a bit, and there's some. Also, it's not like we're about to build a tower. It'd be more trying to encourage, Verizon and AT&T to put one in somewhere, but I don't know if there's anything there. But so if there, but that's on the list because again, at times in the past it was even more dire. Residents were obviously unhappy and first responders were concerned. So I think that's potentially an issue still, to find out how bad the problems still are, and if so, is something need to be done. That's a potential thing.
Well, with the developments that are going on, it will unload some of the existing towns as well.
What do you mean by that?
They're all interrelated. The only thing you really, the thing that affects you most is the thing that brings the signal to your house, right? And not everybody has a landline type of, or a hardwired type of delivery of telecommunications. But every time there's an outage somewhere, the bigger the outage, the more our towers are going to get loaded up anyway. So with Dryden coming in and bringing more wires through the area, it actually will start to unload some of the other structures.
Even though the Dryden fiber is internet, I don't quite understand the implication on the cell towers.
They're all carrying the signals.
Okay.
Yeah, plus the satellites, they're putting more satellites up that are closer to the earth, Starlink style, and less like what HughesNet was.
So I take it from that you think that the situation is likely to improve. Okay. And lastly, I don't remember, I know that Brad wrote to me, but I can't remember if that was sent to everybody. He said, what about a noise law? So did that go to everybody or just me?
I think that must have gone just to you. I mean, I had heard, oh, this is probably what, a year ago or so, Mark had mentioned to the planning board that a farmer in the area had raised some concerns about the noise law. And then we learned that later that that was in fact Brad who had raised that concern. But I haven't seen anything in writing about it. So if
Okay,
you have
well,
something in writing, I think it
all right,
might
so
just
you
be.
must have, so when I threw this list out, he wrote me, said, hey, how about, I would add noise law to the list, which is not a surprise given his background, and I'm also not necessarily objecting to that. To move forward on the issue, what I would want to know is, is there a problem in general? We know there's this particular incident, that Brad experienced, but is there a problem in general in the town? Is there concern by multiple residents about noise issues? And the other thing is whether the town board has stomach for taking on a potentially controversial issue.
So I mean, at the time when Brad brought it up, I think the town board said, no, we did not, like
Right.
most of us said,
But now it's been a whole year later.
so,
So anyway, so I brought it to Mark today.
yeah, oh, okay.
And again, and he will bring it again. I think perhaps you gave him remember bring it to you guys, but what he did say was he's aware of 2 noise complaints in, I would assume, some recent history. Someone had an issue with chickens in Brookendale and the guitar playing next to Brad's farm. So again, it doesn't mean it's a non-issue, but I would definitely want to know that there's some community desire for it. But we're embarking on something that we know caused a bunch of kerfuffle in Danby recently, years back.
And
So,
it would cost a kerfuffle in Caroline. when it
and
was first
some
brought
years
up.
ago, I can't remember when that was, but we mean
I
the
think,
right town board people.
I feel
So,
like Don was supervisor.
town supervisor, I'm pretty sure Nellie was on the town board at the time, so we're talking 20 years ago, but 20 years is a long time. So anyway.
Well, I mean, I would just comment that I mean, I think the discussions that were happening in the community when the zoning commission was doing its work to develop a draft zoning law would reflect that there was a great deal of concern about having a noise restriction. So I think we should tread very carefully in assuming that a couple of voices raised in favor of that are perhaps not reflective of the larger community.
No, I would start with a survey, for example. It would not be what's percolated up. Again, if something's a big issue, you definitely hear about it. I mean, like even for like 15% of the town, because they might come to town board every once in a while. But again, I would definitely want at least a survey of the town residents to say, hey, is this, a problem for you? And if a bunch of people say yes, then something we could look at it. And no one says yes, then. Okay. So that's what I've got. Again, we'll quit soon. Any other comments from anybody on any of these ideas, any other ideas, anything else we want to put in the mix? At this point, I'm hoping to hear something from the town board about thoughts they have. And like I say, the strongest one that came forward earlier was working on a road use law.
So is that the kind of thing I know in other communities, they have certain times of the year that the trucks over a certain weight aren't allowed on certain roads and stuff. Is that the kind of thing that would happen?
Potentially.
I see it in New Hampshire. I haven't, like I said,
I'm not aware of that in New York State, so.
I've never seen that here, I don't think.
Yeah, me either, but. So, on that, Mark's Bishop Danby passed a road use law recently, so that would be a model for us to look at. There was about, 10, 12, 13 years ago, a road use task force in the town. Don chaired, I was on it. That was during the fracking time, and so the concern was if fracking started, you get a lot of heavy trucks on the roads, and so communities all around, we're all trying to come up with something to help recapture some of that revenue. And sometimes it simply was a road use agreement reached by the municipality and the companies. Didn't have to be a law, but at any rate, and I know that Newfield went through some issues because of the potential there was going to be a wind farm up there. And the wind turbines are really heavy, and so I think they were starting to look at a road use law, maybe they found, maybe they did. The gist of it is that, right, when roads are frozen or dry, they're very strong. And they don't sustain near as much damage as when the undersurface is wet. So when the substrate of the road is wet, that's when the pavement flexes and that wear and tear causes roads to fail. That's after that's the distillation of 12 months of meetings. But the issue we had and why we never came up with a law was trying to attribute a certain amount of damage to a certain usage meant knowing the condition of the road, like how soft was it at the time. And it was just, that was like a impossible problem to solve. People who design roads can average over 15 or 20 years of weather. But we're saying this year the trucks went and it was an early spring or it was a late spring, and then that changes the picture entirely. So that's why I think in New Hampshire, they do what you said, that say you can't go when right after the roads are thawed until they've dried out, you shouldn't do your, logging truck. Makes a lot of
Yeah, I mean,
sense.
I think it's almost like here in New Hampshire, those are the only states I'm familiar with. They say, you can't have open burning from May. I noticed the signs up already from, what is it? Now until May 14th or vice versa. And likewise for the roads, it's like starting now, you cannot have trucks over 6 tons on this road.
So
I don't know if
that's the
that's
sort
time-
of thing,
yeah.
and so there are various state preemptions on what the towns can do. So
Yeah.
that would be the thing we'd have to learn, and Guy would be up to
Yeah,
that.
it'd probably have to be a state road. I mean, you probably couldn't do it on a state road.
Right, we definitely can't touch state roads, but even on local roads, because there's commerce issues and other things, so there's all kinds of stuff. It gets complicated
Yeah.
because of that.
And so, an awful lot of our roads are county roads.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I know the trucks from the gravel pit mostly go down middle
Right.
in Caroline Depot, because yeah, and that's not a complaint. It just means I know what time it is.
But and those are county roads?
Caroline Depot is,
And I think,
I
I
think
knew at the
Minnow
time.
might be a town.
All right, anyway,
So. Problem.
so we may be delving into that, we'll see. I think we should close the meeting. If folks have other thoughts of projects for us to think about, but mostly we're gonna be relying on guidance from the town board, of course, because they have to be happy with what we're doing. We don't want to hand them something they don't want to deal with, so. But again, if you're hearing things from your neighbors or your friends about why doesn't the town do X, that's something for us to think about. So think about that for the next meeting. I will get in touch with Brad, get him here. I will do some of the things I said I would do. And hopefully we'll have very close to final language at next meeting. Okay?
And
Sounds
did you
good.
want to discuss about dates?
Oh, right, thank you.
Right.
All right, so we are currently, I think, scheduled for Tuesday, April 21st. Is that the date we settled on last week? That's what I wrote in the minutes, so I hope I was right.
Yes.
That's still a good date for everybody that's here?
Sorry.
All right,
I just want to say that when you have meetings on a Tuesday, if I have an infusion that day, do not call on me because they give me steroids.
okay, you'll have to alert me. You'll have to alert me to that.
I'll try to take Benadryl or
All right,
counter it.
then the,
I'll do the TV on Zoom.
all right, and then the next one, and looking forward to May, I think would be Tuesday, May 19th. Anybody have any early warning signs for Tuesday, May 19th?
Nope.
No, I think I'm okay.
All right, so that's what we'll say. Okay, good night, everybody.
Night.
Good night.
Stay warm.